Good morning, afternoon, or evening. Welcome to All Things Social Security. I am Stephanie Joy, the attorney at Joy Disability. Welcome to the channel, and I hope you enjoy the video. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Good morning, afternoon, or evening. Stephanie Joy with All Things Social Security and the Law Practice of Joy Disability. Okay, so this is a share. A viewer had asked multiple times and at least a month ago for a discussion on the Social Security ruling 19-2P, which is about obesity and how that is considered in the SSA world. So I think it's a really important one. So I set it aside to be able to take some special time for it. I put together some notes that'll help us better understand what the obesity medical impairment would be, what it would not be, and how we can use it to strengthen our claims. I don't know if this will come out all at once or be in multiple parts, depending on how long it goes. Could go a half hour, not sure. Okay, so I think it's going to be rare that you'll find a judge finding an impairment of obesity if it's significant and not finding it to be severe. They don't ignore it because it's so obvious, you know? So this finding of the diagnosis, super simple. Finding that it meets the next requirement of severity, that's pretty simple too, unless you're maybe just a little tipped over, such as myself, maybe. And once it finds that, then it's going to go into, well, as soon as it finds out an MDI, all the MDIs, they kind of have to look at the ability or the effect it has on the person's ability to function. So when obesity is severe, that is usually when it significantly limits the person's physical or mental ability to do basic work activities, not complicated work activities. And if something interferes with that, that's not the biggest deal in the world because there's thousands of more jobs that are not complicated. But when something affects, and this is true of other diagnoses too, guys, when something affects basic work activities, that's really telling because we have to be able to do basic activities, work activities, generally speaking, to be able to do those higher end jobs. So if you knock out some of those bottom rungs, there is no ladder up to the higher jobs that they can actually point to. And as you might recall, we're always looking at this big basket of 12,000 jobs and trying to carve out all the jobs. So imagine if you carve out this thing here that's very can't do this low end thing, it can carve out a ton of jobs going above it that don't have to do with the industry, but have to do with that basic work activity. The SSA has to consider the symptoms such as pain and fatigue that result from the obesity. So what does this tell us? When you're talking to your doctors, discuss your pain and your fatigue if you have it. You don't have to be the diagnostician and say, I know it's because I'm obese. Just keep talking about your pain and fatigue if you have it. The doctor will make the connection, or it might be made in a roundabout kind of way. I mean, I don't want to say definitively it has to be expressly a certain way by the doctor. But you'll be doing your part for your case if you consistently talk about your pain and fatigue. The SSA also has to consider your obesity together with your other physical and mental impairments. This is the clincher, guys. Obesity alone often isn't going to do the trick. It's not going to eliminate all jobs. But when you start putting 100 pounds of extra weight when we have obesity on a bad knee that we have already diagnosed and diagnostically worked up, a really bad, fragile knee, and that knee is now carrying an extra, 100 pounds every time you take that walk. It could probably really implicate, can that person walk 6 out of 8 hours, which is required for light work? So you got to think about what this does and what it'll do to affect the different RFC possibilities. I use knees, but it could be back, it could be feet, it could be ankles, it could be hips, it could be almost anything. Okay. And it's not whether the record uses words like severe, severely obese, extreme, or morbidly obese. That's not really important. The question is whether the obesity causes functional limits that affect basic work activities. And if it does, it doesn't have to be all basic work activities, but it affects pretty much any of them, it'll be considered severe. So that is the next step after the MDI that you have to prove. Oh, I've got the impairment. Now, is it severe? So again, it's not a listing. It's not a listing. You're not going to find it in the Blue Book listings under obesity or endocrinology or anything like that. But it still matters at the listing page because at listing stage because we have something called meeting a listing, and then we have a concept called equaling a listing. And obesity, particularly taken together with other conditions, whether that's vascular, cardio, musculoskeletal, like we were talking about with the ankles and the knees and the hips, the back, that combination with the obesity can end up equaling one of those other listings that those are under. So the fact of the obesity and its effects can actually tip what wouldn't be a listing level for one of those other things into now a listing level by the virtue of equaling it, but not meeting it. Remember, meeting it would have had to be that the listing level for those knees or whatever, or the back, were already met, and they're not. So it's not listing equaling. But then when they consider the obesity, it wasn't meeting, now it's equaling. And that works just as well. You won your case, basically. So the obesity does not have to stand alone, and it can matter because of how it worsens the impairments, the other impairments you have in your case. That is the big part about obesity. So once you get past the listing and you haven't met it, even though you could, as you know from probably my other videos, you never want to forego avenue B, which is prevailing on an RFC, proving your RFC, your residual functional capacity to perform work-related tasks is so diminished there are no jobs that exist in substantial numbers in the economy that you could do. I would say it is where most cases that win. So when I see people, how do I say this? When I see people focusing only on a listing, I see pro se people do this all the time. I try to redirect them. If you go after your RFC and getting that evidence, that will prove you meet a listing if you do.
So
Okay, back into it. RFC, as you probably know, residual functional capacity is the maximum, the most a person can do despite their limitations. So all the limitations have to be determined. And then the question is, what is the residual functional capacity to do a variety of work-related tasks? They start with the exertionals usually, sedentary, light, medium, heavy, and so forth. And then there's environmental, manipulative, mental, etc. So 19-2P does tell us that the SSA must consider the limiting effects of obesity when assessing the RFC, not just when determining if there's a severe impairment or whether it meets a listing or equals a listing. And obesity can affect so many different work-related tasks. That includes sitting, standing, and this is not all-inclusive, walking, lifting, carrying, pushing, pulling, climbing, balancing, stooping, kneeling, crouching, and crawling. It can affect almost anything that any of our other conditions can affect. It adds to it. It also can affect tolerance for heat, humidity, hazards, and the ability to sustain activity over time. Very, very important, sustaining activity over time. And we talk about hazards. The point I want to drive home is that depending on our habitus and our size, we can potentially not be able to see certain hazards when they're close enough for our eyeballs to see them. That could be because, sometimes you could say, I can't look down very far because I got a belly in my way or what have you, that kind of thing. It also can be we can't negotiate around things as expeditiously as we might have been able to do if we didn't have that extra weight that tipped us over into obesity. So those are some of the things to think about when you're determining what tasks might be affected by your obesity if you have it. It also can reduce your endurance. It can increase joint stress on the joints that have to carry you. It can worsen pain and it can make it harder to sustain work activity through a normal workday, which is what we're referencing when we talk about sustain activity over time. It means sustain that work activity through a normal workday. And mind you, if you're in a case and you're not working, sometimes people get very closed off and don't think they can answer any of the questions. And that's not true. Consider your work day is your day of getting through the day when you're at home and you're in the leave from work stage, or you're just no longer working. Your activities of daily living at home, sustaining your house, sustaining yourself, taking care of yourself, getting all your needs done. Those are activities of daily living, and they're the job of taking care of us. It's not the job we go to do for somebody else, but it's still what would be looked at, because those tasks can all be kind of extrapolated over to many a work-related task in a job or many jobs. And if something is limited in terms of how you do it when you're not even under pressure, because you're not in a competitive work environment, can really lend itself to showing what would be limited at work. All righty. Have a great one, guys. Hey, not quite done yet. I have been told that there's another part connected to this one that's of the same subject matter and actually the same video. So stay tuned if you want to see the rest of it. You'll find it under a title that is similarly titled. It'll probably say part 2 or part 3 or part 4 of the same title as this one. So hope you catch it. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.